Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. So I'm going to be adding another band to the list of bands that I ramble on about. I'm going to be talking about Premiata Forneria Marconi, better known to the world as PFM. So I'm going into deep prog territory, if you like, or at the very least, Italian prog. PFM were, of course, a band out of Italy, and they're part of a whole generation of really good proggy bands that had come about in Italy in the early 1970s. And of all those bands, I think PFM probably achieved the most success outside of Italy. It might be debatable, but they were quite big outside of their home country. So I figured it would be a good band to chat about. I must confess a certain amount of ignorance when talking about PFM, because of all the bands that I've chatted about on this channel so far, I probably know the least about Premiata Forneria Marconi, but I know that I really like them, and I think they're utterly fantastic. If you have any interest in classic 1970s prog, you need PFM in your life. But you know, it's a funny thing with me. I mean, they're a band. I mean, I'd always heard that name around, you know, in my entire listening career, if you like. But I never actually got around to finding any of their albums and listening to them until, you know, really about a year ago. So I still consider myself a newbie when it comes to PFM, but that's okay. I can still talk about the albums that I do have. And of course, you know, being in Canada, the albums I'll be talking about are the English language versions. Like I said, PFM were quite popular outside of Italy, and consequentially, they released albums in both the English language and the Italian language. Now, personally, I would much rather have my hands on the Italian language albums because, you know, it's more authentic. You know, I'd rather hear the band singing their native language than singing in English. But that's fine. I'll talk about the English albums that I have. Somewhere along the line, I will be ordering the Italian language albums. I'll have to, you know, pay for extra shipping to get them imported because there's no chance of finding the Italian versions here in Canada, especially on vinyl. I mean, if I go to a vinyl show or a record shop and I'm perusing through PFM, I'm lucky to find an English language version, let alone an Italian one. So the Italian versions will have to wait for me, but I will collect them somewhere down the line. The albums that I do have and that I will be talking about are Photos of Ghosts, The World Became the World, and Jet Lag. So I know it's chronologically not in a perfect order, but like I said, it's what I have, so it's what I'm going to talk about. As for the band themselves, they are utterly fantastic. Like I said, if you have any interest in 70s prog, you need to check out PFM. They are absolutely essential. You know, on a musical level, PFM is almost like the ultimate 70s prog band. It's to the point where, you know, if someone were to ask, oh, what does 70s prog sound like, you could throw on a PFM song and you pretty much have the whole thing covered. You know, you can hear all kinds of different influences, even though they were contemporaries to all the classic, you know, prog bands that were coming out of England. You know, their first album came out in Italy in 72, I believe, so it's not like they're, you know, I mean, Rush, for example, is a part of that first generation that was influenced by prog after the fact, whereas PFM were still, they were doing their thing right when it was all happening. But you can still point out all kinds of influences. You know, like some of the early PFM, you've got some really great, you know, those ethereal, arpeggiated guitar sequences, very folky, which is reminiscent of the early Genesis. You know, there's also big bombastic piano parts, which remind me of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And there's even some madness sections in there that are, you know, reminiscent of Van der Graaf Generator, which makes sense. Van der Graaf was huge in Italy in the early 70s, same with Genesis as well, obviously. And there's even some Gentle Giant that pops up in PFM as well, you know, where you have like a nice contrapuntal theme where you have, you know, one rhythm that's holding it all together, and then all the, you know, instruments kind of create a musical jigsaw. So there's a Gentle Giant thing in there too. You have, I mean, PFM kind of collects the best elements of early Genesis, you know, bits of Van der Graaf, ELP, Gentle Giant, Yes, and it's all kind of combined into one perfect sound. You know, the sound of the band is just fantastic. So yeah, like I said, they're pretty much essential, and you know, that's probably sounds funny coming from a guy that hasn't collected every record yet. As you may have gathered on this channel, I do have an obsession with collecting every record by a band that I really like. And as my tastes move forward, the bands that I'm into become more and more obscure, and it gets harder and harder for me to find the authentic versions of these albums. But don't worry, one of these days I'm gonna have all the PFM and I'll be able to do a complete video series. But for now, the next few videos I'll talk about with PFM will be the ones I mentioned. So Photos of Ghosts, World Became the World, and Jet Lag. I also have a live album called Cook, which was recorded in New York and Toronto, interestingly enough. And I'm not sure if that was even released in Europe or if that was an American-only release. It gets very confusing with PFM because they have all the English ones and all the Italian ones, but at the end of the day, I'm going to have them all before I pass on. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums things up. I'll talk about more as I go through the albums that I have, but in conclusion, if you have not listened to PFM, you really, really have to, because they're fundamental to the progressive rock thing. They're really, really good. And even though they're a little more obscure than the likes of Yes or King Crimson or Genesis, they are every bit as good, and they're still together. You know, today you can look up all kinds of great clips of them playing their wonderful material in this very same day and age that I'm talking right now. So that's all well and good. Anyway, my rambling is becoming more and more incoherent as I go along, so stay tuned for some more videos discussing Premiata Forneria Marconi. Thanks for watching. You'll see me in the future.